Well, hi, all you hep cats and kittens. Welcome back to another installment of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse and Late Night Noir. And I don't know if anybody watching this would remember the beatnik era, which was in the 50s where I was born. And it sort of stretched out until the late 50s and then into the 60s when the hippie movement sort of took over. But I remember, my favorite character on the Dobie Gillis show was Maynard G. Krebs, who was a beatnik. And if I had some bongos here, I'd pound out a couple tunes, but I sold them, so I don't. But anyway, I can still remember, because even going over there as late as like 67, 68 to the village, there was still a few, remaining coffee houses left where they drank coffee and read weird fucking poetry and the Beat Generation and things like that. But anyway, you come home late at night, I don't care how fucked up you are, and you see a movie advertising this woman in it, Mamie Van Doren, you're going to fucking stay up and see it. You're going to slap yourself silly and drink coffee because you're going to see it. And the name of this movie was 1959's The Beat Generation. And this one concerned a black-gloved rapist who was stalking married women. And that rapist is played by Ray Danton as Stan, a beatnik, a rich beatnik. And he's pursued by Dave, the police officer, a detective who sort of doesn't really like women, played by Steve Cochran. And they sort of intersect after one of his rapes. While he's walking home, he almost gets run over by Detective Dave, and Dave gives him a ride, and of course Stan pumps him for information. And guess what? Stan calls Dave on a pretext that he might know something, and while Officer Dave is out there, he goes over to Officer Dave's house and rapes his wife. And the way he sets it up is kind of insidious because he always picks married women, and he shows up dressed up and says, I was out with your husband, whatever the name was. Last week we went bowling, and he lent me $10 and I want to pay him back, and he whips out his checkbook, but he doesn't have a pen, and he asks if he can go inside and get a pen. Then he plays like he has a headache and pulls out a bottle of aspirin and asks if she can get him a glass of water. While the woman in the house is getting that glass of water, he slips on these black leather gloves and rapes her off camera. We hear the slaps and the screams and all the other good shit associated with that kind of crap. But anyway, Detective Dave is hot on the trail, and then after his wife is a victim, he's incensed, but even more incensed when he finds out that the little woman is pregnant. And she doesn't know whose the child is. Could the child be Detective Dave or the rapist? Well, he's none too sympathetic, and even less sympathetic when she suggests she wants to get rid of it, and she's yelling, could you love your child if you found out that, he wasn't yours, he was the rapist, yada, yada, yada. So she goes to a friend of hers, this Catholic woman played by Irish McCullough, Sheena of the Jungle, and she sends her to a priest played by William Shallert, another familiar 50s face from the Patty Duke show, and they go yada yada yada. Well, in the meantime, rapist Stan decides to try his luck with Georgia, Mamie Van Doren, whose husband is not home, but she willingly sort of lets him in because her and her husband have split up. So before Stan could do the dastardly deed, the aforementioned ex-husband shows up and the plot is foiled. But now Georgia is enlisted with Detective Dave to entrap Stan. So here's where it sort of veers into Olsen and Johnson Hell's-a-Poppin' territory. Stan is at the coffee house and knows that they're coming after him, so he starts some weird thing like we're all going to run down to the beach, and starts a fucking conga line or something, and they're all bouncing around there as Detective Dave and Detective Jake, played by Jackie Coogan. Yes, that Jackie Coogan, Uncle Fester. So they're doing all kinds of weird shit in this coffee house, and for some reason Detective Dave gets into a wrestling match with none other than Slapsy Maxie Rosenblum, ex-prize fighter turned character actor. Whatever the hell it is, it winds up all over the place, and eventually Stan is subdued and breaks down crying and is carted off to jail. The reason I got this piece of paper here is there are so many fucking names in here that you would recognize. It's insane, and a few of them are uncredited. And they even have, to catch Stan, a couple detectives cross-dressed. One of them is Sid Melton, you know is a familiar face from 50s horror films like The Lost Continent. But, here we go. We have Steve Corcoran as Detective Dave. Mamie Van Doren as Georgia. Ray Danton, who played Legs Diamond twice in Rise and Fall of Legs Diamond and Portrait of a Mobster with Vic Morrow, and also I believe he directed The Deathmaster. Then we have Faye Spain as Francie, Mrs. Dave. Of course, Jackie Coogan as Detective Jake. James Mitchum, son of Robert Mitchum, as a beatnik. Irish McCullough as the Catholic housewife. Slapsy Maxie Rosenbroom as the wrestling beatnik. Louis Armstrong and his whole orchestra is there, along with Robert Anthony. Guy Stockwell as a cop. William Shower as a priest. Sid Melton as a detective. Regina Carroll as a beatnik. Charles Chaplin Jr. A vampira as a beatnik poetess. And somebody named Grabowski, who must have been big in the 50s. So the film's all over the place, and it's a fucking pisser to watch because of just so many people involved in the damn thing. And, the leads are good, and, it's typical late night noir, something that just popped up and you just couldn't take your eyes off of. So definitely worth checking out. And there is a Comic-Con coming up on the 16th, Saturday. I was supposed to be at it when it was booked in November, but I have since canceled out. But it's the Mahoning Comic-Con in Youngstown, Ohio, at the Holiday Inn on 7410 South Avenue in Youngstown. And I don't know a lot of these people, but you have Deep Roy from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Ming Chen from AMC Comic Book Men, Dan Gorman, a Topps artist, Lisa Neld, Caleb Thrust, Chris Kazmar, Matt Horak, Bill Krause, Star Trek Dr. Picard. They have a website. There's a whole load of them on there. So if you're in the Youngstown area and you're a comic book fan in general, might be worth checking out. Again, Mahoning Comic Book Con in Youngstown, Ohio. So definitely check it out. So that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. PD Close will be back Wednesday, so watch out, and we'll catch you on the flip side.